Okay, there we go. Today's learning is sponsored by Jerry and Sheila Hermel in memory of Jerry's mother, Sheila Bas David, on the anniversary of her yard site. May her neshama have an aliyah.
Amen.
So I'll tell you today, first of all, if you notice on the side, I put up the Mishnah. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it in a way that's, in a way that I can, a little more versatile, but at least the Mishnah is up there. So if you don't have a text in front of you, so if you see on the group chat, if you go into that on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a thing which is probably lit up already because I put something in there, but you'll see that it says chat. And if you click on the chat, so then you'll get the screen, and on the screen you have the Mishnah. I'd rather have a better text, but at least this way the Mishnah is up there. Before we get to the Mishnah, though, which is a very, very, very fundamental, important Mishnah, which is going to lead us into the next couple of Mishnayos, I just wanted to mention that tonight and tomorrow is Yom Hashoah, which around the world is a very major thing, and here in Eretz Yisrael it becomes a little bit more profound. Two interesting observations that I had from yesterday. We had yesterday in the Ulpan that I'm taking. There's the fellow who's married to a Holocaust survivor, and she spoke to the group. It's very, very fascinating. But there were two amazing things that came out of it. One amazing thing is that for us this is a strange time, and it's a difficult time. There's a certain unknown quality to it. There's a certain eeriness to it. She said that for her, this brings back, being almost like in hiding, like being alone and being away from people, and having to worry about who you're meeting outside and who you're coming into contact with. It says it just brought up such terrible memories for her that it's not just the regular fear that an older person has. An older person is worried about who they're coming in contact with because of getting sick and all of this and all the considerations that they have. But she said that for her, it just brought back all the memories of all the hiding that she did and all of the fear that went along with it. It was an incredible thing. She said that people don't realize that there is, for some people, there's a whole nother layer to this of not what it is, but what it connotes and what it connects them back to. That was one thing. The second thing is that it's interesting. Today would have been the day that we began our Poland tour. It would have started. The plan was to start it today, but it was fortuitous and bashert that we did not make such plans, because obviously it wouldn't have happened. And so I want to just mention something. My Upan teacher was not, I don't think, a religious person, but she said she was telling the group and explaining to them as if, the fact that they were never in Israel before means that they have no idea about what Judaism is, and was explaining about what Yom Hashoah is. And it happens to be that there's mostly religious people in the group. And she was explaining what Yom Hashoah is. And she started to talk about Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah, which is the name of Yom Hashoah in Israel. As the original name of it was Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah. The Shoah being, of course, the Holocaust, and the Gevurah being power. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the origins of Yom Hashoah, the history of Yom Hashoah. The Yom Hashoah was started really as the day to commemorate the Warsaw Ghetto and the Warsaw Uprising. And it was because the Shoah was seen as an embarrassing thing for many Jews, for many secular Jews, and many in the Zionist world. When they established the state of Israel, so the state of Israel was established with tremendous koach, with tremendous power, and the Holocaust was the antithesis to that. And therefore, the remembrance of the Holocaust centered around the remembrance of the uprisal of the Warsaw Ghetto, because that showed Jewish gevurah, that shows Jewish strength. I once heard here in Israel, it's a child of a Holocaust survivor speaking about how her mother came to a kibbutz. That's where, when she came from Europe, she came to a kibbutz. She was part of a kibbutz, and she had numbers from Auschwitz. And they used to ask her to please to cover over her numbers, because it was a symbol of sheep to the slaughter, and it was a negative symbol for Judaism. When they started Yom Hashoah, it was really to commemorate the Warsaw Ghetto uprisal, and they wanted to institute it. Really, it was going to come out on Pesach, because that's when it began. Was Pesach night at the Seder, but that's not appropriate. So they chose right after Pesach, a time right after Pesach, which is also not appropriate, because it happens to be that right now we're still in a period of time, which is, we don't say Tachanun. There's a certain joyousness to the month of Nisan. We do practice signs of mourning because of the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva and many of the tragedies that have happened to the Jewish people. But we wouldn't have chosen a specific date to commemorate something that could have been chosen. Any day of the year would have been appropriate. And the fact that we already have a day which is Tisha B'Av. And according to many contemporaries, on the 10th of Teves is the Yom HaKadosh HaGadol. That's the day of the Great Kaddish, which is where many people have chosen to have a yahrzeit day for their loved ones that were killed in the Holocaust. That's the yahrzeit day. If they don't know what day that they were killed on, so then they say Kaddish on that day on Sar B'Teves. So the day was really created in a very secular way. It only became had some religious connotations to it much later, but its origins were that it was a secular day. And it was a secular day called Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah. It's not just about the Holocaust, but it's about the power of the Jewish people. So my teacher started to explain this, and she don't know what she's dealing with. So I said, in the most polite kind of way, I said, Slicha Dina, in my beautiful, very, very beautiful, very eloquent Hebrew. I said to her that every single Holocaust survivor is a giant, is a gibor, is a powerful person. I heard this story yesterday of this woman who, she told her story. She was 1.5 years, and she never went to the camps, but she and her mom hid out from house to house, farm to farm, and they just spent their entire war experience. And she has certain memories of it as a child, but they spent their war experience hiding out from going from place to place, from convent to home, and some very dramatic moments and situations. And when she finished, she was a secular woman, and when she finished, everybody was giving her like a bracha. Everybody in the class was thanking her for speaking. It was very emotional. And I said to her that a lot of times we don't realize that one of the reasons that we talk about our parents, when we talk about our loved ones that are no longer here, is because it keeps them very much alive for us. It keeps them in our lives. I said, when you tell over the story of your mother, that you keep your mother alive, and you keep her memory alive. And I explained to her that when we take groups to Poland, we do it for that reason. That's one of the underlying reasons of why I go to Poland. When you go there and you tell the stories of the Holocaust, and you speak about Holocaust survivors, and you do it in the place of where that took place, their neshamas, their souls are elevated. And their souls are in essence really reconnected back into this world and really kept alive. Their memory is not lost. It was a very touching thing to her. But what got her even more was when I said that your mother was a gibor. Your mother was a giant. And I think that that's something that we have to realize. We've been fed all these years with this idea of we went like sheep to the slaughter. And without going into too great detail of that, that's not the reality. And the reality is that we went, whether we had the strength to be able to pull ourselves away from it or not, that's not the indication of the real strength of a person. But that we went with dignity as human beings without ever losing our sense of humanity, that's a huge thing. There was once a Rebbe who was being beaten, and the German that was beating him, Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah, says to him that, where is your God now? Do you still believe in your God? So he looks at the guy and he says, as long as I'm down here and you're the one that's doing the beating of an innocent person, says, then I'm still connected to my God and I'm still connected to my people. And I'm still happy to be this kind of human being. Because we never lost our humanity. We never lost our menschlichkeit. We never lost our ability to care for other people. When you go to Poland and you go to Warsaw, so Warsaw, there's no places really in Warsaw. There's one shul, but everything was destroyed in Warsaw. What you do see in Warsaw, though, is you see monuments to where things were. The Platz, and you see the place where they gathered all the Jews and they took them off to the concentration camps. You see the place where the Mila 18, you see where the house was. You can see where all of those things were, but there's nothing left. There is an incredible monument, the Rapport Monument in Warsaw. And everybody focuses on the one side of the monument. And on the one side of the monument, you have very strong, right, Roland, I'm sure you remember this, you have very, very strong looking people, muscular fighters, which is really a monument to the fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto. On the other side of the monument, you see poor, what appears to be old people being marched off to the concentration camp. But if you and the contrast between the two sides of this monument is very stark. That here are the fighters and there are the sheep being led to slaughter. A friend of mine, and we tell this over every time we go, that a friend of mine was once on a plane with a Holocaust survivor, and the Holocaust survivor said to him, "Did you see the monument in Warsaw?" He said, "Yes." He says, "So explain the monument to me." So he told him that on the one side is the gevurah, is the power. He said and this is a religious guy talking. He says, one side is on the gevurah. He's a rabbi, and he said on the other side is the sheep to the slaughter. And the survivor said to him, "You're making a terrible mistake." He said, "They're both gevurah, because if you look on the other side, says, look at all those old people, and there are children with them." He says, "You know what that's a monument to?" He says, "When we were standing on lines in the concentration camps, I can't tell you how many people would take their grandchildren from their children and would hold on to their grandchildren so that their children could live, so that their grandchildren were too young. They weren't going to be selected for work or for life. They were going to be selected for death. And so that their children could live and could save their lives. So they would worry about the grandchildren so that their children could go to the line of life, could be pushed into the direction of life." He said that people cared about each other and that people were worried about each other and that people till their last minute were worried about taking care of each other. That is the gevurah, that is the power. The stories that are so often not told are the stories of the spiritual power of the Jewish people. You know what the theme this year of Yom Hashoah is? They have a theme, I guess, every year. And the theme this year is Jews helping Jews. And in those stories, in some of those stories, will come out the amount of connection and concern that Jews had for each other in the Holocaust, which unfortunately we don't always hear about. We hear about the beatings, the murders, the death. We hear about the loss of life, but we don't hear about those last moments of life. There was a person, Rav Meisels, who is no longer alive. He died recently, and he was a very, very chashuv a person. And he tells a story that in Auschwitz, they had brought in one of the transports about 1,500 young yeshiva students, and it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, and they were going to slaughter them all on Rosh Hashanah. And there's a whole dramatic story of how he had a shofar, and he went from barracks to barracks on Rosh Hashanah blowing the shofar. How they would get people to make noise in the barracks, and then he'd blow the shofar so that people could hear the sounds of the shofar. I mean, it's just incredible. People on their way to death still holding on to who they were and what they believed in. They asked him to go to the barracks where these 150, the place where these 150 were being kept, where they were about to be slaughtered. And the story is an incredibly dramatic story. And imagine standing there in Auschwitz telling this story of how he went and he blew shofar for them. And his son was telling him, "Dad, don't do this because you've put your life on the line the whole day. It's like, it's so dangerous what you're doing. And this is even worse because if they find you doing this for these guys who are on their way to be killed, so then for sure you're not going to be able to make it out of this." He did. And at the end, the students blessed him that he should make it through the Holocaust and that he should continue to do his beautiful things. And throughout his life, he was an incredible person, established many, many, many Torah institutions, and was responsible for Torah life in Chicago. All because he was concerned about the spirituality and the life of other people. When you stand in the women's barracks and you hear about some of the things, some of the Mesiras Nefesh, some of the incredible Mesiras Nefesh that went on of people giving up their lives for other people, just to make sure that other people are taken care of, and just to make sure that other people have a little bit of comfort and have a little bit of their fears taken away, of people concerned and worried about others, that's the gevurah of the Jewish people. I don't mind calling this Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah, as long as the word gevurah does not mean military power. It doesn't mean physical power and physical strength. The word gevurah has to include also the giborim, the giants, the mighty people who showed us the way of what it's like when there's tsaras in Klal Yisrael, when there's tragedies and there's problems, and there are things that are difficult in Klal Yisrael, how we don't merely just turn inwards, but that we turn outwards also. And when we remember the Holocaust, another fascinating thing I asked her, the teacher actually asked her, what do why is Yom HaShoah important to you? So she said the usual speech, that it's important that we never forget the Holocaust. So I just want all of you here tonight, just think about it a little bit. Why is it important for us to remember the Holocaust? Why is it important for us to teach that to our children? Don't answer me now, but just think about that. Why is it really important? So most people will say, because the world can't forget what hatred does. And that's important. There's no question about that. But that's not the most important part of it. For us Jews, it's a reality that there's hatred in the world. We know what's out there. What we need to remember and what we need to teach our children is we need to teach our children about giborim, about people who are pressed up against the wall, who never lose their humanity, never lose their menschlichkeit, never lose their love for other people, their love for Jewish people, their love for God. That's what we need to remember. To me, that, when I grew up in shul, I would look around and there were guys there were numbers. It wasn't even a shocking thing to me. Guy would roll up his sleeve to put on his tefillin and there was his number, and he was a Holocaust survivor, and it was just a reality. My parents were not, my grandparents weren't. We had, I'm not going to tell the story now, but we had in our family, a very, very dramatic story in the Holocaust. But it wasn't in my parents or grandparents weren't in the Holocaust. They all came to America before the war. But the Holocaust was an absolute reality. You saw it around. And you heard these people's stories, and you knew how they were moser nefesh. And they weren't necessarily particularly religious. They happened to be, putting on tefillin every day, but they weren't particularly religious. But they nevertheless were people who each one of them worried about somebody else. Each one of them had a story about how they saved, how they protected, how they took care of. That's what we're going to be missing when we lose our Holocaust survivors. Not just witnesses to what Hitler Yom Hashoah did and to what hatred can do in the world, but real gevurah, real might and real power, living examples of what it's like not in the worst of times, not to be lost in yourself and to be worried about other people and to be worried about their safety and to be worried about their comfort and to be worried about their peace of mind. That's an incredible thing. And those are the stories that need to be told over. Those are the heroes that we need to hear about. The people who, until their last moments, never gave up their love for others and their concern for other people. Okay. Just a little thought. And that's why I'm so thrilled that this year the theme is Jews helping Jews. Because it's not just about non-Jews helping Jews, which is always an important theme in the Holocaust. Very, very important. Tzadiki Umas Ha'olam that helped the Jewish people, but Jews that stuck their necks out for other Jews, and Jews that helped other Jews, and sometimes at the risk of their own lives and at the loss of their own lives, but that they helped other Jews. That's really an incredible thing that we need to find out about and to learn more about. We were sitting on the bus on one of the trips, and we when we would drive from place to place, we would show movies, many of them from Yad Vashem, historical movies. I mean, there's just so much to learn and know. I'm sitting and watching one of the movies, and I see my uncle, my great uncle. Like, what's he doing? I knew what he was doing up there, actually, but it was just like, you're sitting and watching a film, a Holocaust film. You don't expect to see somebody you know. So I saw my great uncle. My great uncle was a Rav in Seattle. He came to Toronto before the war, and he was a Rav in Seattle, and he got involved in an organization called the Vad Hatzalah. Hatzalah Nitchei Yisrael. They were very much involved, mostly towards the end of the war and after the war, in repatriating people. In other words, taking people out of the camps and bringing them back to life. I'll tell you an incredible story. I was once in Melbourne, Australia. I was living in Sydney, and I went to Melbourne for a Shabbos. And I wanted to daven in a quiet place. I was staying in somebody's house. They took my house in Sydney. I took their house in Melbourne. And I wanted to daven in a quiet place. He told me that there's a shtibel, a small shul, of all Holocaust survivors, Polish, they call it the Palisher shul. He said, you'll be comfortable there. It's a nice Hamish davening. He says, go daven there. So I go, I'm davening, it's fine. Guy comes over to me towards the end of Musaf. This is in Melbourne, Australia. Guy comes over to me and says to me, are you a Wogelerter? You can run, but you can't hide. It's like, nobody knew me. I was a 26-year-old kid. Like, nobody knew who I was. I said, yeah. So he said to me, how are you related to Shalom Pinchas? So I said, he's my great uncle. So the guy started to cry. And he said to me, the Shabbos after we were liberated, we were in a DP camp, said, and your uncle spent Shabbos with us. And he sang with us, and he danced with us, and he taught us the parsha, and he gave us shiurim. And the guy looks at me and says, he was mechaya mesim. He restored our lives to us. This was what my uncle and many, many Rabbanim from America spent their time doing after the war. There was a problem after the war. Many families were separated, and you didn't know who was alive and who was dead. How could a woman get remarried? If she was separated from her husband and her husband might still be alive, so then she wouldn't be allowed to be remarried. It's literally called an aguna, a chained woman, in its literal sense. They spent much, much, much energy and time going through records to be able to establish some kind of testimony that a man had died so that his wife could be released and that she could get remarried. They went through, and this, I heard this story my whole growing up life, but I never heard it attributed to him. Recently, I saw a magazine article, and this was attributed to my great uncle, that many parents took their babies and put their babies into concentration camps, into convents. They gave them to the Catholic neighbors, and they gave them to the orphanages, and they were raised in orphanages. And after the war, when people came back from the camps, so they would go back to the orphanages and to try to get their children, and they were told their children that, oh no, we have no Jewish children here. And they would often not give the children back. The Rabbanim tried to get involved, and they were told, no, these are not Jewish children. So what they did in many orphanages is that the Rabbanim would come in bedtime, and as the children were being put to sleep, they would walk up and down the rooms, and they would say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, and kids would cry out, Hashem Echad, because this is what they were brought up with. As little babies, they remember this in their heads. It was stuck inside. And in this way, they were able to find the Yiddish children. They were able to bring the Jewish children out of the orphanages. These are Jews helping Jews. These are giborim, people who gave up their lives, gave up their livelihoods, went to Europe to try to help to reestablish other Jews, to be able to give them back their life, to be Mechaya Mason. These are our giborim. When we look now, even in the corona, we look at everything that's been going on, and you hear about Jews helping Jews. You hear about people reaching out to others, people taking care of other people worrying about other people. Those are our giborim. Those are our mighty, powerful people. And those are the people that we need to celebrate and to memorialize, and that koyach, that power, to be able to be a gibor in a time where it's so difficult to be strong and it's so difficult to express strength. That's the incredibleness of the Jewish people. That's the incredibleness of the Jewish spirit, of the Jewish soul, is to be able to have that gevurah, to be able to have that kind of power. And that's the unfortunate thing that we lose when we lose the Holocaust survivors, when we lose that generation, we lose those living examples of gevurah. Okay, so just again, when next time you hear the name of the day called Yom Hashoah V'hagevurah, don't let yourself be lost or dragged down the line to say that the gevurah is the physical might. It is, but that physical might wasn't coming from a physical place. That physical might was coming from the deepest of spiritual places. And that's the gevurah of the Jewish people. Okay. I'm a little worried that I'm not going to make it through the Mishnah tonight, because it's going to take me more than 15 minutes. I'll take a moment on Yom Hashoah. If you don't, I don't think anybody is going to mind. Some of you have heard the story already. Some might have had the the advantage of being with me when I was able to stand in this place. But I'll just tell you for a moment that in our family there was in the Wogelert family was a very illustrious, for many generations, illustrious rabbinic family. There were Chassidic rabbis. There was a lot of Torah teachers. There was my grandfather's first cousin the name was Chaim Yitzchak, and Chaim Yitzchak Wogelert was a young man, a great Talmud Chacham of note, and was a very prolific writer. He wrote in a very beautiful way, and he was very poetic, very eloquent. And during the war, it's an old dramatic story of how the family was separated from each other. His wife and his young child, Felix Feivel, were separated, and he went and was hiding out on farms. And his wife was able to actually live in the open because was able for she and her son to pass them off as Catholics. And she stayed with her son, and she raised, she appeared as a Catholic, and was able to make it through the war relatively safely. Her husband, on the other hand, with many members of the family, with other children and siblings, were hiding out. Towards the end of the war, so that the farm that they were hiding on, where they would be covered during the day, they would come out a little bit at night, so that the farmer was worried that was starting to get nervous. The Germans were approaching. So they sent two of the youngsters out that night to be able to find another farm for them to stay on. They went out, they found another farm. They came back in the morning, and the entire family had been slaughtered. And there was no one left. So these two grabbed the diary of Chaim Yitzchak and ran off, made it through the rest of the war. They ended up in Toronto. This Felix Feivel, he was 4 at the time, 5, whatever, never knew his father, Chaim Yitzchak. But the day he got married, his uncle sent him the diary. His uncle was living in Toronto, sent him the diary as a wedding gift. And he took this diary, put it in a drawer. He couldn't confront the diary. Many years later, his son, who himself was a fine Talmud Chacham, took the diary, and it took him 20 years, translated the diary into English. And the diary is like the diary of Anne Frank in the sense that there are many accounts, many people that tell stories, but not very many diaries that recorded that made it through the war, that recorded day-to-day activities. And every time somebody was killed or somebody would die, he wrote an elegy for them, a eulogy for them, an incredible akina, it's called, just an incredible work. They printed this in English. It happens to be called the Unfinished Diary. It's available on Amazon. It's really an incredible work. But what's most dramatic is that the family decided that maybe the reason why it became a very wealthy family was that it needed to go back to Poland and to be able to find the farm and to be able to find the bones and to exhume the bodies and to give them a proper burial. And to make a long story short, they went back, they bought the farm, they excavated the farm, and on the farm, they found the Atzamos. My cousin was able to sit Shiva for his father, who he had no recollection of, and they took all of the atzamos and they buried all the bones, and they're buried here in Eretz Yisrael in Har HaMenuchos, in one of the big cemeteries in Yerushalayim. And there is there what's called the Kever Achim. It's like a mass grave to the family. It's my first trip to Poland. I very much wanted to go and to see this, to go to the farm, to go to find this. And it just didn't work out. Timing, everything, it didn't work out. My last trip to Poland, I called my cousin. He gave me he said, you'll never find the farm. So you'll never find the farm. But he told me of the town, so we went to the town, the Olashitz it's called. There was the shul. It's a shell of a shul. It was magnificent, but it was just the outer shell of the shul. There was nothing inside. Inside it was completely gutted. And then we went to the cemetery, and there was a memorial to all the Jews that were slaughtered. It was just, the whole thing was incredibly dramatic. We had a Polish guide along with our Jewish guide. And our Polish guide, when I told him the story, became very, very fascinated in the story. He researched. He comes over to me and he says, I think I can find the farm. I said, my cousin said it'll be impossible. I said, no, I think I can do it. So we're driving through back towns, back roads in the Olashitz, Poland. And, whatever you would imagine back roads would look like, that's exactly what it looked like. It was like farmland in the middle of Yupitzville. And we're driving through, and then he tells the driver to stop. And he tells me, that's the farm. I open up the book. There's a picture of my cousin standing there when they exhumed the bones. And Taka, you had to look a little bit, and you realize that's the farm. So we get out, and I'm very, very emotional at this point. I'm starting to daven. I mean, this is the place where they were slaughtered. This is the place where they were hidden, and again, the amount of gevurah that went on in this place, the amount of real power and strength, of spiritual power and strength, was just amazing. As I'm davening, the next door neighbor, Polish guy comes out. He looks to be about 70. So I didn't assume that he was that he was necessarily there during the war, but I said to my guide, go ask him if he knows anything about the family. So my guide went over to the guy and he said to him, you know anything about the Jewish family and that was hidden here? He says, Wohlgelerter? He says, this is what you want to see. And he takes us. We have these great pictures of me like running after this guy. This guy just takes off like a shot, walking down the street, get to a farm, get to like a big farm area, and he points across the field to a forest. I have no idea what he's pointing to. He doesn't, and I don't speak Polish, and he's not saying anything. And then he walks away. So I go across the field. And as I get to the end of the field, to the beginning of the forest, I know exactly why he sent me there. Because you can see, this is 25 years ago that they found the bones, but you can see that there's still a hole there where they exhumed the bodies. And here I had the opportunity to be able to stand in a place to say, Ani mamin b'emunah shlema. To say the words that they said up until their death, to be able to daven in the place of where my relatives, where my family was slaughtered, to be able to offer some words of tefillah, some words of prayer to elevate their neshamas, it was just an incredible experience. It's not over though. As Roland can testify to, we learned this song Ani Mamin, and we sung it wherever we could. We get to Eretz Yisrael. It's Yom HaZikaron. It's actually the day before Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. We went to the Kotel. As we're walking away from the Kotel, there was some kind of ceremony going on for soldiers, and there was a whole bunch of religious soldiers standing around singing Ani Mamin. And it was just so dramatic. Like here we were standing in the concentration camps, standing in Auschwitz and standing in Treblinka, singing Ani Mamin. And here we're standing in Eretz Yisrael with soldiers defending the land, singing Ani Mamin. Yom Ha'atzmaut, at night, we went to Yeshivat Merkaz Harav. And there we met with Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shapiro, who has come to our community. And he spoke with us, learned with us. And then we went into the Beis Medrash and we davened with them. And there at the end of the davening, there they sang Ani Mamin B'Emunah Shleima B'Vias HaMashiach. And it was again so amazing, that connection. Right after davening, a guy walks up to me. I think I don't make up these stories. A guy walks up to me and he says to me, "You're a Wogelerter?" So I said, now you have to understand, you know how I walk around, suit and a hat. In that yeshiva, the only, there's a few of the rabbis and the Rosh Yeshiva, of course, but they ain't no other hats in the place. So when you're walking around in the hat, you sort of stand out like a sore thumb. Guy comes over and he says, "You're a Wogelerter?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "My father," he happens to be the Rosh Yeshiva's son-in-law, and he knew that I was coming, and he was able to, pick me out of a crowd. But he said to me, "My father, when he heard that you were going to be in the yeshiva tonight, my father told me that I had to come over to you." I'm not making any connections. Guy says to me, "My name is Furman." Furman was the name of one of the partisans, one of the Jewish partisans that took care of my family while they were hiding on this farm. They would bring them food because the farmer was doing nothing for them. This guy would take care of them. This was his grandson. I said, and what an amazing thing. Here we are. We just sang Ani Mamin B'Emunah Shleima, a descendant of Furman, descendant of Wogelerter, standing inside of a Beis HaMedrash, standing inside of a study hall in a yeshiva in Jerusalem. Ani Mamin B'Emunah Shleima B'Vias HaMashiach. It was such a dramatic closing of a circle. Again, the incredible takeaway that we have to walk away with from the Holocaust. There are so many things that we have to learn from it. There are so many spiritual things we have to learn. But one of the most powerful things is the gevurah, is the power. Not the physical power, not the physical might, but the spiritual power of every single one of the Kedoshim, of every single one of those holy Jews that perished in the Holocaust, of how their light, internal light, burnt bright until the moment that it was snuffed out. That's what we have to hold on to. That's what we have to memorialize. That's what we have to think about. And that's how this day becomes a meaningful day. Not just to remember the hatred, what happens when the world hates. Yeah, okay, shkayach. That's for the world. But for us Jews, we have to commemorate and celebrate the gevurah, the power, the spiritual might and power of Jews until the moment that they're taken from this world. And that's what we have to look towards, to model ourselves, to shape ourselves, to make ourselves like. All right. So just a few thoughts about Yom HaShoah. And at least my shir is prepared for next Monday. And next Monday we'll do the Mishnah. I'll put it up again. But it would be good if everybody could get something. You could do it online too. You got to go to Sefaria, but just have a text available. I'll put it up on the chat, on the group chats thing on the side. But it's always good to have a text also. All right, everybody should have a blessed day, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Moving.
Thank you.
Shukar, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we holding? Okay, where are we holding?
We are holding in 45 B. Amar le Abaya le Rab Yosef.
I got it. Okay. Today's learning is the Ilui Nishmas Shengel Bas David. You're in a Shama have an aliyah.
Amen.
How many lines down is that?
Say again.
How many lines down is that on the daf?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. From down to up.
14 from where the lines get wide.
You said Mem Hey?
Meme Amid Beis.
Okay. 14 from when? Okay.
Okay.
There
And
are
this,
only there are only 4 wide lines.
It's almost 14 from bottom to top.
Oh, okay.
okay. And everybody can hear me well with this mic, right?
Yes, Rabbi.
Omer Abai Rav Yosef, the Atlo Tizbra the Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yehuda. He said, and you don't hold like Rabbi Yochanan that gotta get my head back into this. One second. Right, we're asking on Rav Yosef why we didn't know what the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan was from the Maisa Shahoya, from the event that took place. So Amalei Abai Rav Yosef Yadlo Tizbra the Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yehuda. You don't hold that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to muktzah. Ha Rabbi Abba Rabbi Ami iklu lebei Rabbi Abba dimin Chayfa v'nafal minarta al galime de Rabbi Asi. And a menorah that was lit at the beginning of Shabbos fell onto the coat, onto the beged of Rav Asi. V'lo tiltala, and he wouldn't move it off. Well, my time, and what's the reason that he wouldn't move it off? Lav mishum, isn't it not because Rabbi Asi, who was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda Svirle, and Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda on this strict side of muktzah, the Islay muktzah. So Amalei, he said, no, Minarta Kamras? You're telling a story about a menorah that fell on a glima? It says Minarta shiny. A menorah is always going to be different. To Amar Avacha Bar Chanina, Amar Avasi, Hora Reish Lakish B'Tzidon,